Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Well, today I want to talk about, you saw the title, I want to talk about our food system. Now, some folks say that our food system is broken, and I would tend to agree with that. But I want to give you a homesteader perspective, an Appalachian homesteader perspective. Now me, I'm an educated fella, and I understand about the need for nutrition. I'm not a biologist, okay? I am not a medical professional. I'm a physicist, physical science, and I also chemistry, okay? So I know a little bit about chemistry and biochemistry, and yeah, I know enough to get me in trouble, okay? So one of the memes that homesteaders love to pass around is a picture of an old woman standing out in her garden, and it said our grandparents survived because their food was local and they knew how to do stuff. You know, that's one of the most bull sugar memes I have ever seen. Now, I am 61 years old. I was born in 1963. This is 2024. And my dad was born in 1930. At the height of the Great Depression. He grew up. His mom and dad were born in 1908, 1909, something like that. And they were 20 or 21 years old when he was born. Dad's little sister died before he was born. And they only had one child. Okay? They only had one child. They had two, but the first one died. So they only had a second child, was all. They didn't have 4 or 5 children or 7 children like some of Dad's brothers, okay? Or some of Grandpa's brothers, my grandfather's brothers. I call him Paul. If you hear me say Paul, you'll know what I mean. So that meme stands out in my head because almost all of those old timers bought stuff. They bought fertilizer, they bought weed killer, they bought all these things that we buy today. They bought insecticides, they bought bug dust, they bought lime, they bought, okay, they bought. The thing about their thing being local, yeah, they raised a lot of their own food, but without the inputs of modern stuff, yeah, that was not a thing. Now, I will say that they did eat what was in season. Okay? They did eat what was in season. They ate fresh vegetables in the springtime, and they ate in the summer and fall, and at winter they ate a lot of dehydrated stuff. They killed a pig in around Thanksgiving when the weather was turning cool, and they smoked him. Later on, they got freezers and were freezing stuff. As my grandmother and grandfather got too old to do all the canning, they canned vegetables. They had a whole smokehouse. They had a whole well house. Their well house was probably about 15 feet square. It was made out of cinder blocks, so it was probably 16 feet square. So they had this well house and had a potbelly stove in it that when it was going to get down to freezing, they went out and built a fire in the potbelly stove so that their canned goods wouldn't freeze. And it kept their potatoes from freezing. They kept their potatoes in there and all that stuff. So in the wintertime, they ate a lot of potatoes. They ate a lot of beans. They ate a lot of sweet potatoes. They ate a lot of dehydrated stuff. They ate a lot of shuck beans. They ate a lot of lard. Okay, they ate a lot of biscuits and gravy because they bought flour, sugar, coffee. Okay, because you can't grow those in Appalachia. So they bought flour, sugar, coffee, and they bought all kinds of other stuff too. Okay, don't get me wrong. Those old timers, they bought all kinds of stuff. Even the folks out on the prairie bought stuff if they could get it, or they bartered for it. Okay. you see these things, little outhouse on the prairie, and it's just not realistic to the way it was. And people have this mythological fantasy about that. But the truth is, yes, our food system is broken. And let's talk about that a little bit. Now, us here in America, we have it so good. Okay? We have it so good. We have no concept. None of the generations from mine forward have any concept of what it's like to be hungry. Alright? Very few. There are still some folks here in America that are hungry, but it's because of lifestyle choices of the parents. It's never the kids' fault, okay? Never the children's fault. It's the fault of the parents, and we shouldn't punish the children for the fault of the parents. But let's stay off of the political stuff. In this country, we don't see want for food. We do see want for shelter. We're having a hell of a time with that, but we're concerned with the food system today. So let's stick with the food system. I can go any time of the year and go buy a tomato. I can go buy a spring lettuce any time of the year. 8 billion people just made it into the planet. There's no exact numbers. You know, nobody goes through and counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? About 8 billion people exist on the planet today. In 37 years, me and Chris will have been married 40 years come February. In 37 years, we'll have added another 2 billion. So there'll be 10 billion people on the planet. And the question is, can we feed them? Well, prior to modern agriculture, about 2 billion people was all our planet can sustain. Modern agriculture has upped that number, so we have enough food for 8 billion people, but getting it to them is a thing, and we'll cover that in just a minute. But one of the first things you have to look at for the food we have are nutritional concerns. Okay, concerns about food quality. One of the things that when we talk about food quality is we have to talk about nutritional quality and processed foods. One of the first examples I'm going to give you, a Coca-Cola. A 20-ounce Coca-Cola contains 65 grams of sugar, processed sugar. By the way, Coca-Cola is more expensive than gasoline. Alright? A gallon of Coca-Cola is about $6 if you buy it in 20-ounce bottles. Okay? It's about $6, and that's buying it in a 6-pack. If you buy it already refrigerated, it's like $10 for a gallon of Coca-Cola. So it's more expensive than gasoline. There's just some flavored water and sugar in it. So, yeah. But a Coca-Cola has in it 65 grams of sugar. Processed sugar. Well, you think about that. And 65 grams of processed sugar, and you think, well, that's not that much. But the truth is, 65 grams of processed sugar, if you have one Coca-Cola a month, that's 4.2 pounds of sugar a month. 4.2 pounds of sugar per month. Mountain Dew has 73 grams of sugar. 4.8 pounds of sugar a month. Okay, where does that go? It goes right on your belly, right on your arms, right in your heart. Okay? Because what does your body do with excess sugar? It turns it into fat. That's what it does. We want to blame this and blame that on obesity. We want to blame it as people's problems, but in reality, one Coca-Cola is equal to 5 Little Debbie cakes worth of sugar. One Coca-Cola, 20 ounce, is equal to 5 Little Debbie cakes worth of sugar. So we're drinking our calories, and as a type 2 diabetic, I can tell you, if I drink my calories, my blood sugar goes crazy. If I eat processed foods, my blood sugar goes crazy, because your blood sugar elevates when you eat these processed foods, because they go right into your bloodstream. They go from your stomach into the bloodstream. If I eat an apple, it doesn't do that. There's all kinds of sugar in an apple. There's all kinds of sugar in a banana. If I eat a banana, it doesn't do that. Okay? There's a lot of fiber in a banana and an apple. But if you eat those sugars, it doesn't do that. And people say high fructose corn syrup. I'm going to tell you, high fructose corn syrup is just sugar. It's sugar. Sugar. It's glucose. It goes right in. Your little brain is a glucose machine. So any carbohydrate you get, your body turns it into glucose. Glucose is a sugar. If it says OUS at the end of it, of a molecule, it's a sugar. Okay? Fructose, glucose. Okay? So, those sugars go straight in. Straight in. And there's no nutritional value. Sure, they give you lots of energy. Sugar gives you lots of energy. Lay off the sugar for a week and see what happens. Okay? McDonald's sweet tea. I'd tell you how much sugar's in that, but I don't want to tell you. It'll hurt your little feelings. It just, yeah, it's probably worse than a Coca-Cola. I know, sweet tea. Sweet tea's great stuff. All right? I hate sweet tea. Crystal loves it. But, yeah. Sugar. Sugar, sugar, sugar. Refined foods. Many of the foods that we get are refined to the point that they go straight in as carbohydrates and converted to glucose immediately. The proteins we get have high fat contents and unsaturated fats. Now, I'll just tell you, this saturated fat through unsaturated fat has been a debate that's been going on for a while. Lard versus vegetable oil. A lot of our oils are highly refined, and they have to be refined in order to yield us those high smoke point oils. And those highly refined oils are refined with chemicals. And traces of those chemicals remain. Alright? Traces of those chemicals remain. So, yeah. So we've got a food processing problem that's remarkable in itself. So all the processed foods that you and I consume, all the things that come in a box or a tinfoil pan, or you heat up in the microwave, all those are processed foods. Macaroni and cheese. I love macaroni and cheese. But it's a highly processed food, and it goes straight into the bloodstream. Have you ever noticed that when you eat macaroni, all at once you're hungry in just no time? Because it's almost totally empty carbs. Okay? Totally empty carbohydrates. There's no nutritional value there. It's just empty carbs. You eat it, and then as soon as the blood sugar high goes away, there you are. Alright? Carbohydrates are converted to glucose, which is sugar. All carbohydrates are converted to glucose, which is sugar. Carbohydrates tied up in vegetables and not a lot of carbohydrates in vegetables, okay? Not a lot of carbohydrates in vegetables. More fiber than carbohydrate. But fruits, pears and peaches and all that stuff have quite a bit of carbohydrate in them, but it's tied up within the vegetable proteins, and it takes your body longer to break them down, so they go into your body a little bit slower. So eating fresh fruits and vegetables are a lot better for you than the processed stuff. Peaches and syrup. Oh, I love peaches and syrup. Pineapple in syrup. It's one of the greatest things on the planet. Alright? Don't you think that those old timers didn't like that too? My granddad loved pineapples in syrup when I was a kid. They could get them, and he bought a can. Every time they went to the store, he bought a can of pineapples and syrup, because he fried that pineapple and then poured the syrup over it. Yeah. Yeah. But there's other things to consider. The other dangers in our food system are pesticides. Alright? And herbicides. And I'm not even going to get on GMOs. And the reason I'm not going to get on GMOs is the average home gardener is not planting GMOs in your home garden. GMOs are very expensive. GMO seeds are very expensive. They're not the seeds you buy at Walmart. Those are not GMO. They might be hybrids. A hybrid is a cross between one vegetable variety of the same type and another vegetable variety of the same types. Okay? Broccoli and cabbage, you could cross those. Of course, broccoli is cabbage and cabbage is broccoli. Those are in the same family. So, yeah. Alright? So, that is not GMO. So, we're not even going to consider GMO in this talk. We'll talk about GMOs separately in another video in days to come. I'm not going to worry about GMOs today, because the average homesteader who has his own vegetable seeds and who buys vegetable seeds even at Wally World, they're not GMO. They're not genetically modified. Genetically modified seeds are very expensive. Most beans are not genetically modified. They can't be. Alright, it's just the way they're made. They're real hard to genetically modify, so most of the beans you see are not genetically modified. They're hybridized. They're crossed with another bean variety. Okay? So, we are going to talk about some of these things. Pesticides do more than harm the bees. We have pesticides in our own food system. We have insects in our own food system. There are, if you looked at the things, they have so many roach legs that can be in a pound of flour. So many bug eggs can be in a pound of flour. You know, that's just the way it is. If you think you don't eat a bug, then something's wrong. You're wrong. You eat bugs all the time. All the time. Everything you eat. And you think you're not killing animals because you're eating vegetables? Have you seen how vegetables are made? How they're processed, how they're harvested? Okay? Animals die all the time from that, unless you're buying $100 a head lettuce. Okay? Monocultures. It creates monocultures. We'll get to that. And then the other part is food safety. We have outbreaks all the time of things like listeria and E. coli. Here lately we had the boar's head outbreak with listeria. That was a major thing. It's killed several people. I don't know exactly how many. I would say how many, but I don't know how many. And I don't know how many it made sick, and how many people didn't report, or how many people were old and they assumed they died of something else. Okay? That ate that stuff. So, who knows? So our food system is prone to spreading illnesses and diseases, not just to me and you, but to the animals we grow. To the animals we grow, to the other crops. Okay? They'll spread insects from one country to another. Countries guard their borders because they don't want insects. The lanternfly that's invaded the United States. We tried hard to keep it out, but we didn't make it. So we have the lanternfly. Okay, there's a species of fruit fly out west. We tried hard to keep it out, but it got here anyway. So we have those. Those are dangers to our food system. Then there are inequalities within the system. Okay? Inequalities within the system. Why do rich people live so long? Well, they eat the best food. They eat the best They can afford to buy all organic, natural food. Have you went to an all organic food store and priced food? It's frightening. It's frightening. Now, me and Crystal, most of our food is organic. I do use fertilizer, okay? I admit, God forgive me in the holy grace, and I do use fertilizer. In the last 3 years, I haven't sprayed a pesticide. I have sprayed pesticide in the past, but I've quit raising crops that I have to spray pesticide in order to get a crop. I've done that. So there are food inequalities. And I'm not just talking about Americans. There's food inequalities right here in America. Have you ever been to a poor community? A poor Appalachian community, like where we lived in Harlan County, up the river from us, 28 miles from the nearest grocery store. And 28 miles to poor people is a long distance, okay? It was over a half an hour drive because it's a little twisty, turny back roads. It's over a half an hour drive to get to the grocery store. And there's not a gas station between the grocery store and them. So, as far as going to the grocery store, if you're really poor, and I'm talking about really poor, then those people have a hard time making it to the grocery store. A lot of them bum a ride with somebody or that kind of thing. And they're basically captured. They're captured in the place they are. They can't move out of it because they're place bound. And I'll call it place bound and just leave it at that. There are lots of reasons that they're place bound, but just say they're place bound. So getting to the grocery store, whether they might be old or young or whatever reason, they're place bound. So there are food inequalities. They can't go buy good quality food. Okay, if the only place they can go is to the Dollar General, they have to buy processed food. Dollar General sells processed food. All right, there are no whole foods at Dollar General. Okay, no organic options generally at the Dollar General. Crystal and I shop at the Dollar General often, but there are very few organic options at the Dollar General. Clover Valley Pop-Tarts are great. A lot of sugar. All right. So now, poor people don't have the option of buying good quality food. So they buy stuff that's processed, and it's contributed to the obesity epidemic. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm fat. Been fat all my life. I was in the 8th grade. I was 5'8", 214 pounds, or 202 pounds. 202 pounds. So, yeah, I've been a big guy all my life. But we ate cornbread and we ate beans and taters and all that kind of stuff, but the schools served macaroni and cheese, pizza, processed meals, okay? They didn't serve us fruits and vegetables. We might have had some canned green beans or canned peas or something as the week went on. Get away, fly! That fly's eating me alive. We might have had some green beans or some canned fruits and vegetables, or canned, canned peas. But we didn't have salad. We didn't have that kind of thing. That was just not, and if we did have salad, it was just romaine lettuce. That was it. You know, it was just head lettuce. You had some head lettuce with some grease poured on it. Salad dressing. Just grease. So it wasn't a healthy option. We had milk. We had chocolate milk. They never gave us the option of just having water. We should have had waters, but we had a water fountain if we wanted water. Everybody sucked out of the same thing. Passed strep throat to everybody around, but that's the way it went. You know, we got it. We got an antibiotic, and we got over it. So, yeah, there are those concerns, and there are concerns with antibiotics and antibiotic resistance. But Food deserts are a huge problem in this country for us. Imagine how it is for countries like Cuba, countries like Bolivia, South Africa, the Congo, India, really rural, poverty-stricken places. I was watching a video. The average Cuban, and this is not about politics, I don't care, but the average Cuban lives on $15 a month. $15 a month. Try it. I dare you. I double dog dare you. Well, I guess I should go with the triple dog dare. But that would be breaking etiquette a little bit, so I don't want to do that. So yeah. So I think about us, and I think about those people. And a good Christian should do that. You should think about the other people without judging them. You should think about other people without judging them. And I'm talking about the people here in our country too. No child should go to bed hungry if we can prevent it in the richest country in the world. Just, it shouldn't happen. So there are food deserts that we don't get fresh food out to these rural areas and these inner city areas. There's none available. Or if it is available, it costs more than they can afford. Now, another part of the problem that we see in our food system is vulnerability. When your food system is transferred 1,500 miles from one location to another, then there have to be all kinds of vulnerabilities somewhere in that transit process. There's large amounts of waste. Okay? Large amounts of waste. Let's say you're bringing tomatoes, and it's January, and there are no tomatoes being grown in the U.S., and I know that somewhere in the U.S. somebody's growing tomatoes in January, but let's say in January there's nobody growing tomatoes in the United States. So where do our tomatoes come from? Well, they come from Brazil. So in order for the tomatoes to make the trip over here, you ever put tomatoes in your refrigerator? Now, we grow these big old heirloom tomatoes, and they're easy to bruise and that kind of thing. So if they tried to put an heirloom tomato on the truck or on the boat in Brazil to bring it to Florida to drop it off so that it could be transported on into the U.S. or to the harbor there in Savannah. They come up the Savannah River and drop them there in Georgia. Well, those tomatoes, if they were the big old heirloom type, they couldn't stack them one on top of the other. They would have to have each in their own row and that kind of stuff, and they'd still lose about 50%. They can't let them ripen on the vine. They have to pick them green. Okay? See where I'm going? So, in order to transport them, they have to have not a genetically modified, but a variety that's been bred through breeding to make a hybrid tomato that stores well, that has a tough skin, that it can be shipped long distances. So in order for that to happen, they have to have that variety. Well, when you get those varieties, you're breeding for that. You're not breeding for vitamin content, you're not breeding for mineral content, and you're not breeding for taste. So you're breeding for transportability. So all of the tomatoes that you get in the winter are shipped from somewhere else. They pick green generally, and you get them and they are tasteless because they didn't ripen on the vine and because of the variety that they are. You know, they're a tomato and they're wet and they might satisfy a craving in January that you have, but we dehydrate tomatoes and I love the dehydrated tomatoes. So you can grind those up and powder them and take that tomato that you put on your hamburger and then put some of that dehydrated Cherokee purple tomato powder. Oh, it changes the flavor a lot. Try it. It'd be good. But yeah, so somewhere between here and there, we've got vulnerabilities. Loss of product. Let's say one of the ocean liners goes down, not sinks, but let's just say one of the big ocean liners that's bringing it has a fuel problem, and for some reason all their fuel leaked out. Well, there they sit. All the produce on that boat is gone. Thousands and thousands of tons of produce just gone. Could have fed 1 million people. All right, 500,000 people. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities. And then there's the vulnerability of small farms. Now, small farms have a hard time making it because the large corporate farms are really making it hard for small farmers to keep up. The reason being is that everything's locked in. Chickens. You know, if you don't work for a certain company, you can't hardly sell chicken. And a chicken that's organically produced, and there are people buying them, okay, organically produced chicken, you're going to pay $30 for an organic chicken, whole chicken. 2 or 3 pounds of chicken, 4 pounds. A 4-pound chicken or a 5-pound chicken, you're going to pay $35 or $40 for it. Well, I'm not going to pay $35 or $40 for it. I can't afford to. All right? Me and Crystal don't have the means to do that. I can't afford to. Most people don't have the means to do that. The wealthy have the means to do that. That's why they live longer. Just the way it is. They have better health care. Okay? They have better health care. We need a national health care system, but we don't have it. But the wealthy don't want us to have a national health care system because it might interrupt their health care. They have health care. They have better health care than me and you. But neither here nor there. So there are vulnerabilities built into the system. They're especially vulnerable in small places that are vulnerable to climate change. Now, in the United States, climate change, we have a lot of people who deny climate change, and that's okay. You can deny it all you want to. Climate change is a fact. It doesn't need you to believe in it. There are a lot of corporations that want you to believe that climate change is not real or it's not man-made because they're the ones that made it. Okay? They're the ones that are making it. So follow the money. That's all you have to do is follow the money, and it's real straightforward. But there are some areas that are really prone to the impacts of climate change. Some areas are really prone to the impacts of climate change. So you're going to see more impacts as time goes on. Okay? In the next 40 years, like I said, we're going to put on another 2 billion people. And the more people we have, with the less food we have, with the higher climate impacts we have, we're going to have a lot of migrations of people. That's happened in the past, and it will continue to happen. Darfur is a good example. People migrating that caused a catastrophe of biblical proportions. All right? You don't think about that, look up Darfur. There was a catastrophe there of biblical proportions. So those things happen, and they're happening because of the climate in marginalized places where marginalized people live is changing so rapidly that they can't adapt. And it's creating famines and diseases, and it'll be diseases that come here if we don't do something to help. Okay? It'll be diseases that come here. It takes only an hour or two to transfer a disease from Africa to the U.S. or from Asia to the U.S., from Europe to the U.S. Okay? Only a few hours. I think the flight from South America to Florida is only like 2 2 or 3 hours. So you fly 2 or 3 hours, and a disease that originated in an aboriginal forest that we have no immunity to is on our shores. That's just the way it is. It's the way it is. So we live in a global society right now. And that's going to change soon, and I'll explain that in a minute in another video. This global society is going to come to an end. Not in my lifetime, but it will be another global society, but it'll be more on the lines of Christopher Columbus's global society. So we'll talk about that in another video. But you're going to see these diseases pop up because our food system is so vulnerable. Hungry people are more susceptible to disease than healthy people, than food healthy people. So those are going to be things that are going to happen to us as we move on into this century, okay, into the 21st century. So yeah, this is going to be a big deal in years to come. One of the biggest things we see happening with our food system is it creates a lack of cultural diversity. I know, you are what you eat. So I don't eat chicken feet. Anyway, love you, Tim Farmer. Anyway, you are what you eat, and communities are arranged around the foods they eat. The traditional farming practices in a community help determine the culture of the community. Appalachian culture, which was walled off pretty much by the Appalachian Mountains, was totally different from other cultures within the U.S. When the Irish folks came over from the famine, from the potato famine, which was not really a famine, it was a genocide, but we won't go into that. When they came over, they formed into communities and kept their culture. Now, the American melting pot has happened, and there aren't as many traditional foods being served as were served to them. Chinese people. Let's do a good example. The Chinese restaurant down in Richmond here that me and Crystal love to go to on date night, that Chinese restaurant does not serve Chinese food. Okay? Most of that food is an Americanized version of Chinese food. Okay? It's an Americanized version of Chinese food. So, it is not their cultural food practice that we see. Does that make sense? So, there are cultural anomalies that occur that causes us to be more like one society than just that society, okay? Than just the small knit community. There are still small knit communities. I call them, again, they're food deserts. They're places where people eat shuck beans or pinto beans every day. Okay, pinto beans saved Appalachia. All right, pinto beans and cornbread saved Appalachia. My mom's mother was a single woman because her husband got killed. Mom's dad, he was shot in Everett's in the back, and he lived for 6 months and died at what was called the Black Mountain Hospital, which doesn't exist anymore. It was a coal company hospital. But he died of a gunshot wound after 6 months, and Mom was 4, and Granny had 2 kids on a half-acre piece of property, and there was no WIC, there was no food stamps, there was no TANF. Thank God for that stuff today. They almost starved to death. Soup beans saved their life. Also, one of the big things that we look at is factory farming. Factory farming brings up a lot of ethical issues, and in order to be competitive, a lot of smaller farmers have converted to factory farming. They raise chickens in great big warehouses. They raise pigs in great big warehouses. They've never seen the light of day. Okay, yeah. There are some ethical issues about the way we raise enough food, but can we raise enough food ethically? Okay, can we raise enough food ethically to feed the world? I wonder about that all the time. Can we raise enough food ethically to feed the world? I want to raise animals here, but I don't want to raise them in confinement. My grandfather raised his hogs in a 16 by 16 pen. Two full-grown hogs in a 16 by 16 pen, and yeah, that's not ethical as far as I'm concerned. They never saw it. They had a cover over the pen. It wasn't dark in there. It was open. You know, you had the sides, the boards came up to where they were taller than me. Of course, I was probably 10 years old, so I was probably 5 foot tall, 4 foot to 4.5 feet tall, and I could look over and see the pigs, but I couldn't get over in there. And then there was a gap, and then there was a roof, a metal roof over top of it. So that's where those pigs spent their entire life. And he had a hole cut out that he poured the slop into their trough. So he used slop. It was all the scraps from the house, some pig feed, water, and he poured it right into a V wooden trough that was in there, and that's how the pigs ate. And that was just the way the old timers did it. And is it ethical? I don't think so. It's no better than the confinement farming that we do today as far as the pig's welfare goes, the pig's life goes. They haven't had a good life. They didn't have a good life. It was always spent in pig shit. It was just not good. So there are a lot of ethical issues with our farming practices in order to feed the world. Also, how much meat does the world need? Can we do it all with more grains? Well, there are ethical issues with grains too. You know, yeah, get away, mosquito. There's a lot of ethical issues with the way we do our modern farming practices. And can we get away from that and feed our world? That's going to be the big question in our future. In the next 40 years, we're going to have to decide, can we feed 10 billion people with ethical farming methods? One of the big stumbling blocks to our food system is maybe government, but it may not be government. That may be the only thing that can save us. All right, everybody says big government's bad, big government's bad, big government's bad. Well, before the government stepped in, farming was conducted by slaves. A whole different ethical problem. Okay, the government stepped in, farming was no longer conducted by slaves. But there were chinks, real chinks in the food system, until the government regulated some things. Some things they've overregulated. Some things they've not regulated enough. Okay, to keep our food supply safe. You and I can't keep our food supply safe. Remember, more corporations are farming now than ever before. All right, making it hard on the private family farmer to make a living. Now, family farmers have pretty much turned into corporations themselves. Small family farms, 96% of them have to work off farm in order to make ends meet. Okay, one of them is working off the farm. So that's just one of those things, that one of them's working off the farm in order to make ends meet. So corporations have an obligation. They have an obligation to make money. You don't incorporate unless you want to make money. That's their goal. Number one goal, make money. Always remember that. Corporations' number one goal is to make money. They could care less who they kill. It's not that they have no soul or no morals or no scruples, or It's a corporation. It's a group of millionaires and billionaires that say, this is what we need to do. And somebody does that. Okay? This is how we need to do that. Well, we can't do it without killing this, or we can't do it without extincting this species. That species don't matter. Let's make the money. That's what they say. Okay? Tobacco companies. Tobacco companies said, oh no, tobacco's fine. Our research shows that tobacco won't hurt a soul. Matter of fact, tobacco's good for you. We know that they were lying. We know that they were out and out lying. Okay? It's happening in the energy industry. It's happening in all kinds of industries. And I'm sure it's happening in some of the farming industries, especially for the seeds and different things. It's happening. It's happening. They make money. Without government regulation, those folks would run roughshod over me and you every day and twice on Sunday. So, yes, you have to have government regulation. All right? Some people say, well, there's too much government regulation, this, that, and other. We need to have smaller government. Smaller government leads to deader population. I'm just going to say it. When you take out an example, less FDA inspectors, fewer FDA inspectors at the food plants, okay? Department of Ag inspectors, fewer people. Next thing you know, we have a big listeria outbreak because nobody was there checking to see what a corporation was doing. Okay? Coal companies, if there was not government oversight, and if they didn't have federal inspectors and state inspectors and all that stuff to make them be safe, we'd have 3 times the men dead mining coal every year than we have now. 3 or 4 or 5, 10 times maybe as many mining coal as we do every year. Okay? Example, black lung. In Kentucky, a coal miner that's been in the coal mines for 30 years has got black lung. Okay? Coal dust has got into his lungs and he's got black lung. That's just the way it is. Alright? Anybody who says no hasn't seen the way coal miners come in. Dad blew black out of his nose and coughed up black stuff for a week during his vacations. Okay? Black stuff. He had coal dust and rock dust in his lungs. But the coal companies got together and lobbied, and a coal miner can't hardly get black lung disability benefits in Kentucky because of it. Corporations. Government has to control what corporations do, or else it hurts the populace. So, same thing's happening in our food industry. If we don't control our food industry to make corporations be assured that they're doing the best they can do for us, that they're not overusing antibiotics, that they're not overusing pesticides, glyphosates, all that stuff. Because you and I can't sue them enough to go into those corporate pockets who own large parts of our government. Okay? Our congressmen and senators don't listen to you. You can send them all the texts and stuff that you want to, but unless you donate $100,000 to their campaign, they could give a shit whether you lived or died. Just saying. Our government is owned, and that's part of the problem. And yeah, that's part of the problem, and it's a weakness in our food system. Another component is consumer awareness. Consumers are aware that they have to pay more for an organically raised chicken, an organically raised free-range eggs. They understand that they have to pay more for that. But if they're just barely scraping by, they can't pay more for that. So there's that inequalities again. So a lot of folks would argue that there needs to be consumer education about food and about how it's raised and how we treat things ethically and why it should cost more. Well, that's all fine and good as long as you got money. Okay? It can cost as much as you want it to. But if you can't buy it, you're starving to death. So, educating people, the general population, about why organic is better is not a solution. It's a contributing problem. So we have to come up with real solutions to these world problems. Education is a wonderful thing. We need to be educated about what's going into our bodies, about what we eat, about how it's processed. But our agricultural folks have to process at scale. All right? They have to process at scale. How many countries are rationing? Okay, there's lots of countries out there that rations how much you can have of this and how much you can have of that, because they don't have enough. All right, and they can't buy enough. A good example, let's say we send oats. So the United States is the richest country in the world. We have no concept generally about what these people are going through. So we send oats over to a country in what we call the third world. But we send oats over to them. And they have to process those oats because we send them to them raw. Okay, just how they come out of the field. We send them goo-boos, buku, lots of them. That way we support our farmers. We buy them from our farmers, our government. It's called subsidies, okay? It's called subsidies. We buy them from our farmers, and then we send them to other countries. That's our aid, okay? Not all aid that comes from the United States is cash that goes to these countries, okay? We don't send them cash. We send them food. We send them farm implements. We send them things like that. That's how our aid gets over there, but at the same time, we're paying our industries to create that. Okay? So these farmers send this stuff over. Our government pays our farmers, and then they pay to ship it, pay another corporation to ship it, and it's taken over to this other country, and it's a whole grain. It could be wheat, it could be oats, it could be millet, it could be a lot of different stuff, okay? They send that over there, and the people get it, and it comes in a bag, and they've got this whole grain. Well, they have to mill that. They have to use a quern or a rock or whatever they have to use to mill it, a stick or whatever, and they expend more calories turning it into something that they can consume than they get in nutritional value from the food. So there's a big disconnect there, okay? First world countries are paying first world farmers and first world industries to transport the food to third world countries who don't have the mechanization to convert it to accessible food in an economical way that their bodies can absorb it. So they're losing calories every day just to make the food that they have. And it's a dilemma. And you just have to look at it that way. You know, it's a dilemma that our modern farm and governments are going to have to come to grips with. 10 billion people might have to die. A bunch of people might have to die off in order to meet our goals in the next 40 years. I don't know how that'll happen, but it'll probably be disease. In closing, so far, there's still hope, okay? We still have hope. Don't think that hope is gone. There's always hope. In the past, when we've come upon these challenges, technology innovations have helped us. You know, GPS guided tractors and all the different technology information has helped us to become more efficient at our farming practices, more condensed at our farming practices. So maybe we can continue to feed the world, okay? But if we don't continue to feed the world, there's going to be mass migrations and wars, and it's just going to be what it is. If we have to figure out a way, I would love for us to be Star Trek, but I don't think humans will ever reach that point. I think we're just too damn greedy. Just putting it out there, I think humans will never reach the level of doing away with money and doing away with want. If we could do away with want, so many ugly things that happen on this planet would go away. You know, the aliens come down and look at us and they go, oh, wow. Yeah, don't go down there. They're not developed life forms. They're not intelligent. Okay? No aliens visiting us, just so you know. I did a video about something like that, but yeah, I just like to say it every now and then. There are no aliens visiting us. I just say if they came down and saw us, they'd be afraid to come down, because we're so crazy. Anyway, technology innovations might save us. Sustainable farming practices will help. But I don't know if we can do enough sustainable farming practices to maintain 10 billion people. Okay, I just don't know that we can do that. That's just, that seems like the maximum level of people that this planet might be able to contain. Now, there are a lot of different opinions, and I don't have all of the science at my fingertips to tell you that, yes, I believe this, or yes, I believe that. I just have guesstimates, okay? This is just Joel Eldridge guesstimates based on my education and life experiences and what I've read and what I've looked at studies and research. And I don't know if we have the capacity to maintain 10 billion people. I think our ability to transport food will be impeded greatly in the next 40 to 50 years. Our ability to transfer food 1,500 miles to come to your table or to go to another person's table may greatly be impeded in the next 40 to 50 years. I'm just guesstimating that, but I'm not talking about my lifetime, but I'm talking about in the lifetime of my children. So that could be a huge thing. Now, a lot of people would say urban farming practices can help save us. There is not enough square footage in New York City to support the population of urban farming. Not Cincinnati, not Lexington, Kentucky, not Louisville, not Detroit, not Miami, okay? It's just, that's a pipe dream. Some folks say that urban farming can feed a city. Bull sugar, okay? You're always going to have farms. That's why I think we shouldn't be using our farms for our solar. Don't be putting solar out on the farmland. Put solar over all of our asphalt. That's where your solar needs to be condensed. Put it over the asphalt that we're driving over every day that can't be used for nothing else. That's where solar needs to go. So, there's hope. Never give up hope. But the world of climate change and the world of tomorrow is going to look so different from the world that you and I live in today and from the world we idolize in the past. Let me tell you something. Being 61, I get to get off this ride before you do. Before a lot of y'all do. Some of y'all that are my age and older will go together. Okay, I'll see you on the other side. But the folks that are left behind are going to have to deal with our mess. And I hope they can come up with some innovative solutions that don't involve everybody having to succumb to some kind of disease. It's just, you know, poverty and starvation breeds disease. And new diseases come from poverty-ridden areas. That's the way it's always been. Now, if you like this stuff, this homesteading, do-it-yourself kind of thing, be certain to come on out to the channel and subscribe. We do this homesteading stuff every week, sometimes once, sometimes 5 videos. Just depends on what's going on in the homestead that week. Now, if you hit the little bell, it's right up here. It'll notify you when we upload a video. We upload on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and then shorts on Friday and Saturday. So now, with that being said, time for me to get on to the next thing. Love y'all.